I call the Honourable Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I did want to come down to the House and take a call on this bill as a member in Canterbury and a member who's had obviously an involvement right through the period of the earthquakes and the recovery. And can I just begin by acknowledging my colleague in the Chair, the Honourable Nikki Wagner, who not only has brought the bill as local MP for Christchurch Central, as she's been successfully now for some years, but also in a happy coincidence as in her capacity as the Associate Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery, because as I think every Canterbury member of this House will agree, there are certain milestones in the recovery and certain parts of the recovery that we look to as being a real sense of, yes, that's another one under our belt that makes us feel like we really are making significant strides. And all of the progress steps are good, but there has been certain points that you can just feel a collective sense of, yeah, we're getting there. And, I can name a number of them and they'll be different for every member. Certainly one of the earliest ones for me, and it sounds a little bit sort of trite and frivolous, but the first night sitting in the new AMI temporary stadium, watching the Crusaders horsemen gallop around the park, the crowd going nuts, the red and black flags flying proudly, and there was that sense of, you know what, we might be down, but we're still here. And the Arts Centre, in a totally different way, has the same sort of community cohesion and being like a living member of our community, because I don't think there's a Cantabrian who doesn't have fond and numerous memories of the Arts Centre in a number of ways. I obviously went to law school in Canterbury and the University of Canterbury, and there's a real sense in Canterbury when you talk to UC graduates of, were you in town or out at the new campus, and that was a real dividing line in the history of the University of Canterbury, and the law graduates from days, the good old days as they would have it, back in the Arts Centre would talk lovingly about their lectures in the Arts Centre buildings and going off to court and doing their articles during the day with local law firms. It's obviously progressed through a number of iterations. I mean, we're talking about more than 100 years of history, and obviously over its life it's had quite a number of iterations through to a market and sort of arts precinct with local food and cinemas and craftsmen and obviously the famous Ducks Deluxe. There are a couple of things that I think are worth commenting on. One, this House, and a number of speakers have done it before me, have been absolutely right to pay tribute to the Trust Board who are there. Both the Trust Board who are there now, Jen Crawford and her team of trustees, and the trustees who have been there right the way through this incredibly difficult period. And actually those who went even earlier, who did have the foresight to think about preserving, protecting, strengthening the centre, but also taking out significant insurance, which has been obviously, in hindsight, absolutely blessing. Not only that, sir, I have been, as a local member, hugely encouraged and impressed by the unwavering commitment they have to taking the time it takes to put the Arts Centre back in a way that's as true to its original design as possible. That's not a small undertaking. As a member of a trust board, you have obviously fiduciary responsibilities, and yet they have understood the importance of doing this right. And I do think they need to be acknowledged for their work. It's a shame that we can't see the same sort of collaborative consensus, community-wide support for some of the other restoration decisions in the city, because equally important buildings, unfortunately, have been caught up in much more contentious processes. Interestingly enough, and it may sound a little like a tangent, but one of the things I can't help reflecting on as the Minister of Justice is the impact we see through this legislation of trust boards not remaining fit for purposes and trust deeds that are written with the best will in the world very quickly becoming rigid and unhelpful documents in the face of adapting to the modern world. And really this is what we have in this legislation. It is a piece of legislation to give a proper legal foundation for the Trust Board and the operations it needs going forward. And I'm delighted that this House is able to set aside the time to do that. It may not reach the significant impact of some of the other decisions that we debate, but, sir, it is critical to this organisation who are doing a good job, and to see this House come together, recognise that and make the time to do it is critical. But there is a salutary lesson for people setting up trusts and charitable trusts and vesting property in such trusts all over the country, is that they are not without complications and are not easy to amend when you do need to amend them. And I think that there is a critical lesson in that. Finally, sir, I read through the report back from the Local Government and Environment Committee, and I want to, as a member of this House who doesn't sit on that committee, to thank and acknowledge the work of that committee. It has clearly been a process of quite some detail, and I commend them for it.